Hey y'all, welcome and welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Morgan, and here we do a little bit of all things creepy, and we do it daily. We do a lot of spooky things here, but one of my favorite things to do is read scary stories that you guys have sent in to me, and that is what we're going to be doing today. So if you have any stories you'd like for me to share, please send them to this email address right here, and I will put more information on that below. So with all that being said, let's get started on these scary movies. Scary movies? Let's get started on these scary stories. These events started when I was 11 and have never left. Growing up, my parents really mistreated me. I had 2 younger siblings, and I was left to raise them since I was 9. By the time I was 11, I was having a difficult time because my family member fell very ill and later passed away. They were really close to me and the only person that I could ever confide in at the time. I was also going through some family problems, the usual same things. However, we were currently living in the house that we were supposed to fix up and live in. But money got tight and my parents continued the usual arguing, and eventually it came to the point where we had no money for food. What we did have was used to buy things for said parents that shouldn't have been priority when their kids were hungry. Anyways, a little background on this house. It was actually caught on fire, however the cause of it was unknown, and for me I can sense spirits and even openly communicate with them. I don't tell a lot of people in fear of being judged or called a liar, but there have been times when spirits have came to me for help and vice versa. I'm an empath, which is more difficult with my situation. Something was in that house and it was not living. It's a spirit of some sorts, and to this day I don't know what it is. However, it did help me. And as time went on, I started finding things that were useful, like random packages of food laying around, such as Mr. Noodles, that helped me when we didn't have much food in the house. Another thing to note, we didn't have running water or any electricity, which meant no heat, and it was harsh during the winter. But the spirit left us small things. Like I found this sweater, only had a few holes in it, nothing major. Eventually, as time went on, my siblings got taken and I was forced to live with my grandparents. This was when I was around the age of 14. Weird things kept happening. On my back porch, there would be deceased animals that kept popping up. And may I say that I live in a town with not too many woods. I soon found birds like crows with their heads completely gone, or cats, even foxes, passed away with their insides completely missing. At first I thought this was some sick joke, but soon learned it wasn't. My friend, who's also an empath and spiritual like me, helped me make some protection spells, and I started putting salt in the corners of my room, salt under the poles of my bed, by my windows, and in front of my door. I'm also indigenous, so I had access to supplies to help me smudge. I smudged my room and outside, and a few weeks go by and everything stopped. However, I was still feeling stalked by something or someone. Now it's 2024 in February. I continue to offer things to whatever was in this old house when I was 11. But they're gone, it's no longer there, and I can't sense it or see it. But I keep seeing this black figure in my house. It's tall, probably almost 7 feet. It's not like the spirit. I don't know what it is, but it's not bad or good either. There's also 2 other spirits, one that's a little girl, and one that stays on the stairs. It's like trapped there. But if you sleep in the room beside the stairs, you'll wake up to scratches and bruises. The third ghost is still unknown. They only show up at 10 p.m. until 11 p.m. by my front door. He's an elderly man and looks to be from the 1930s. He's never done anything, just stands there and waits for something or someone. I would also like to note that my friend that helped me earlier stayed in this house the first time. We were in my room for a sleepover. They could also see the same black figure in the corner of my room where the door was. It did nothing, just stood there and stared at us for hours. Okay, let's go back. Let's take this one step at a time, because there is a lot going on, and I do have a lot of thoughts, but I have to gather them in a sequence. So, here's the thing. Whenever you are going through things, a lot of negative emotions, mistreatments, have to watch what I say, it can attract negative entities. Not just negative, it can really attract anything. The Hat Man's not a bad entity, but he does get attracted whenever there's like childhood cases like they were talking about. I don't think it was the Hat Man. It could have been. I don't know if it was. But anyways, I'm off track. Any sort of negative energy that's that much can and will attract things. So it's not really surprising that they were going through that and then had to go through even more. These negative spirits don't care. They love that you're going through stuff and they want to make it worse. But what I'm thinking of, the spirit that was in the house that was helping you out, and maybe even some of the ones that you're seeing now, I think those are house spirits. You can have more than one, but if you take care of the house, respect the house, it takes care of you back. And I'm thinking it just saw that you guys were struggling as kids and tried to help you, is what I'm thinking. That's what it sounds like to me. But yeah, I think there's definitely something folklore-ish going on outside with the passed away animals. And I don't love that. I don't love that. We need some iron and we need it stat. Want some ASMR? Hold on. How do people swallow that hard? I wanted to contact you about a situation with paranormal activity that I'm currently in. Recently, I've been having a feeling about an entity staring at me in my old home. The family on my mom's side has always been connected with the paranormal. My grandma's known to see and feel when something paranormal is happening, and it got sent down to my mother. In my grandmother's home before they moved was a sick man who lived there. In the living room, the sick man would lay on his bed. He also owned one cat. During holidays when I'm visiting, I usually see or hear a cat playing with the Christmas ornaments on the Christmas tree. It's happened almost every year since I was 7. I think I've also gotten this ability from my mother since she told me that she can usually feel when something is there. She can't see it, but she can feel it and communicate with it. It's happened a few times when I feel an entity in my own home, and I can't see anything, but I can definitely feel it. I own 2 cats, and they usually look towards my hallway. To clarify, the kitchen is facing a hallway where every single one of our rooms are. We live in a chained house. I live further down the hallway with a turn to the left to a smaller hallway than entering my room. Usually, I walk in at night down the hallway. I've always felt this feeling when something's around. My cats see it too. As I mentioned, they always look down the hallway. They don't stop. They don't look like they're in fear. I've also seen one of my bathroom doors open by their own multiple times, and it's happened very recently and constantly. My house has never had any paranormal related stuff, and it's never been haunted. I feel like I'll never fear the paranormal because I know with my ability I'm strong. My mom's side has always had paranormal stuff happen. My mom has told me that she's had multiple encounters with entities in her childhood home, but never told me more details than that. We also got gifted 3 dolls from my grandma's house a few years ago that are porcelain dolls, and they are very fragile and beautiful. They currently live in a box somewhere in my house, I don't know where. But back to the hallway. When I look down it, I always feel uncomfortable, and it always looks extra dark, and that something's wrong each time I do so. I always feel like something is looking at me when I'm in the living room alone at night. The living room, kitchen, and hallway are all connected and are basically the same room. So it does sound like something's in there. It doesn't necessarily sound negative. It does sound like something's in there. I would maybe reach out to it or do a cleansing and specify that only good things are allowed to stay and see if it stays, but it doesn't feel negative to me. Alright, next story. I watch your videos very often and find them so interesting. I have a couple from when I was living in my childhood home in Pennsylvania. I grew up in the middle of nowhere in the northeastern part of Pennsylvania, and we've had tons of experiences at our house. We always heard things being dragged around in the attic, which isn't possible because our attic wasn't finished, so if anyone tried to stand on it, they would go through the floor. One specific memory is with my sister and I. When we were young, I would always see a tall man with a top hat. I couldn't make out any facial features or any details, but he just looked like a silhouette. He would appear in my room, and I never felt scared or threatened. I would see him and just go back to sleep. My sister had always talked about seeing a little girl. She said the little girl had a plaid blue and white dress on with black shoes, like it was old. It seemed like an old 1900s outfit. We never thought much of it because they didn't bother us. They were just there. A few years ago, my dad was remodeling our house and took the drywall off the stairwell going into the attic, and under the drywall we found a black shoe and a picture of a man in a black suit with a top hat, and a little girl in a plaid dress and black shoes. I have no idea what their story was, but it was very validating. This next paragraph starts off, a scarier story. I am shaking. A scarier story was one that comes from my dad. He grew up in the same area that I mentioned above, and it was a very small town, so everyone knew everyone. When he was in high school, he went to Penn State in the summer. In July sometime for a mechanics competition, there was a girl he went to school with who was made fun of a lot for being into witchcraft and being haunted. Well, my dad was at that competition that he was in the elevator and his friends were going to their room when the door opened. That girl's friends ran into the elevator and were crying, asking for him to help because the girl was in trouble. My dad and his friends went to the girl's room, and when they opened the door, he said it was ice cold in that room. So cold he could see his breath, and the room was trashed. Everything was upside down and torn apart. He said the most chilling thing that was in that room was an overwhelming smell of cherry pipe tobacco. He said that when he called security and he left and went to his room. Fast forward a few years later, he was working his full-time job and went into a parts store that he usually frequented and overheard a conversation with a customer and the man behind the counter. Apparently, the man behind the counter lived next door to a girl from my dad's high school, and he was telling the customer about several experiences he's had while living next to them. He said his cupboards would shake and his daughter would wake him up at night saying she was cold, which he thought was her excuse so she could sleep with him. One night he went to investigate and saw a man's face pressed into the screen of his daughter's window while the room was freezing and smelled like cherry pipe tobacco. My dad heard this again and he put everything back and walked out of the store without saying anything. Fast forward a couple years and he was at work. Sometimes at his job, a priest comes around and talks to the guys and just does a check-in. My dad states that one day the priest came to check in, and he walked into the break room where he saw the priest and a couple of his workers. He heard the priest saying that he did an exorcism at the house of a girl my dad went to high school with. He told the story of the exorcism, but ended it with the fact that he met the master demon of the house when he smelled the cherry pipe tobacco. My dad said immediately he left and never spoke of it again until he told my sister and I about it. Not exactly walkers or normal Appalachia content, but I thought these might be interesting. What was she conjuring up? Next story. We lived in my house for 3 years, but this has been going on for around 5 years now. I keep having very vivid dreams about this old man who wears a knitted sweater vest and has glasses. He used to make me feel safe, and I was fine when I felt him watching. I felt his presence and sometimes even feel a soft hand rubbing my back. I also constantly hear something running up and down the stairs. However, I told my mom about this and described him. She said it sounded exactly like my great-grandpa who passed away before I was born. His name was Arthur. After that, I didn't really feel his presence for a while, but after around a year ago, he came back, but very strong. Every time I feel his presence now, I feel deeply unsettled and very unsafe. A few weeks ago, I had a dream where a woman stood at the end of my bed, and she just kept repeating, "You're in danger," over and over again, until I eventually woke up. I got woken up to a loud noise, and it turns out all of my drawers had fallen over and some books were on the floor. There is absolutely no possible way this could have happened naturally. I went back to sleep and didn't think anything of it. I kept having this dream, and every time I felt his presence, I would start crying. I have no idea why. A few days ago, I heard scratching coming from the wall opposite me. When I turned the light on, there was an A scratched into the wall. Since then, things keep falling in my room, and it's now things that are right near my head when I'm sleeping. I feel unsafe, and I constantly have a bad feeling. I have no idea why he suddenly turns so aggressive and negative, but I really can't describe how terrified I am. I'm not sure if it's even him. Admittedly, I used to have 2 mirrors facing each other, which might have caused something to come into my home. Please help me. I really don't know what to do and how to fix this. So that's not him. That is definitely something pretending to be him. And I think maybe at the beginning it was him. If you feel a different feeling now, it probably was him. Something was watching you, saw how safe you felt with his imagery, and said, "I'm going to snatch that and I'm going to pretend to be Arthur. And they're going to trust me, and it's going to be fine." And it's not fine because you can sense the energy shift, which is really good. So, cleansings, potentially a banishment, depending how hard this attachment has formed towards you. But try cleansing first, see if that helps. Always ignore it. Yikes. Alright, let's read one more story. This story may be a little weird, but here we go. In my entire life, I've been having experiences of what I believe to be supernatural things. For example, suddenly feeling watched and doors opening and closing. Some of my supernatural happenings are a tad bit more scary, though. One experience I had was hearing some objects move, like a chair on the roof. I could hear it because I live on the 2nd floor. I've also felt the presence of my dad going into the kitchen, but when I turn around fully expecting to see him there, he never is. There is particularly one story I would like to share, as I found it more scary than the others. So when I was younger, I always went to summer camp with my friends, and I thought it was very fun to be there. The first summer camp I went to was a little odd, though. The room I slept in was always rumored to be haunted by something, and I could feel the paranormal aura around it. I never told my friends because I didn't want to scare them, but secretly I knew something was going on. Throughout the entire day at the summer camp, everything would go great until we had to go alone somewhere or when it turned night. One time I'd forgotten to bring my swimsuit when it was time to swim, and I ran back to the little house that we all slept in to get it. But everything turned very quiet. I saw a black shadow-like creature. It was on top of one of the bunk beds in another room, and I got scared, so I grabbed my swimsuit as fast as I could and just ran back to the beach. When we were all done swimming, I went back to the little house, and the shadow-like thing was gone. I could have sworn I saw it there, but it had just completely vanished. When it got late and was time for us to go to sleep, I always used to see a ballerina in the distance on the balcony. She would just dance, but sometimes she would be watching me, and I panicked and would run inside. I one time asked one of the camp leaders what was inside of that building, but she just said that it was an old farmhouse that we don't enter. I never saw someone leave or enter that house. It was comforting to watch her dance there, if I'm honest, but it was most definitely paranormal. The night before we left, I didn't see the ballerina anymore, but when we woke up in the morning, we saw a handprint of something with long fingers. The handprint was on the ceiling of our room and had a very high ceiling, so it wasn't possible for any of us to have reached that high. All of us had brought small cameras with us, and we all took pictures of the handprint. When we came back from summer camp and printed out the photos, no picture of the handprint ever came. My family doesn't believe in the paranormal, but I do after my experiences. It feels like I'm the odd one out. That's creepy. It definitely sounds like there was a lot going on at that camp, and I think you may be a little bit in tune with that side. So, I don't know when you sent that, but hopefully things have gotten better. Well, anyways, that is all for today. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me, and I cannot wait to see you tomorrow and hang out some more.